We didn't order for your kid. You should have fed her before, my sister said, while her kids unwrapped lobster tails and triple chocolate cake for $85. Our parents nodded. I got angry and said, "Got it." When the waiter returned, I stood and said this: I have the worst sister, or at least I had the worst sister. Things are different now, but back then, let me tell you why. It was her birthday, and somehow I ended up footing the bill. Not just a gift, not just helping organize. No. I paid for the whole dinner. She picked the place, one of those upscale seafood steakhouses where they don't even list prices online. She told me she wanted something special, said it would mean a lot to celebrate with family, and reminded me how hard things had been for her since her husband left. That part was true. He'd run off with someone from his gym and left her buried in bills. So yeah, I agreed. I didn't realize what kind of night it was going to be until I walked into the private room and saw 12 chairs. I had RSVP'd for two, me and my daughter Maddie. She's 11. Brilliant. Won her school's regional academic tournament and even beat out her cousins. That last part turned out to be important. I just didn't know it yet. We stood near the doorway while my sister adjusted her centerpieces and gave instructions to the staff. No one said hi. No one waved us over. When I finally asked a waiter where Maddie was supposed to sit, he looked confused and said the reservation was only for 11. My sister turned and said flat out, "We didn't order for your kid. You should have fed her before." The table was already full of food. Her twins were unwrapping lobster tails and poking at triple chocolate cake with gold foil on top. My daughter had nothing. No seat, no plate, not even water. I looked at my parents. My mom just blinked. My dad looked away like he didn't hear what had just been said. So I said, "Got it." I waited. Let her enjoy her little moment. Then, when the waiter returned, I asked what the most expensive item on the menu was. He said, "The tomahawk steak with scallops." It was $219. I ordered two. And while the twins licked butter off their fingers and my sister tried to fix her hair for selfies, I got up to check on something. I paid for only my meal and the deposit. That was $1,326.45, already charged. I wasn't paying a dime more. I left a note under her napkin that said, "Thanks for dinner. Enjoy the bill." Then I took Maddie's hand, walked out the front door, and called a Lyft. We went to a hole-in-the-wall ramen place we both love. She ordered her usual, asked me why her cousins were so weird lately, and slurped noodles until she smiled again. I didn't check my phone until later that night. There were 34 missed calls and so many messages I had to scroll just to get to the most recent. The one from my sister just said, "Are you freaking serious?" Yeah, I was, and that was just the beginning. The next morning, I came downstairs to the sound of cabinets slamming. My sister was in the kitchen, barefoot in one of my old sweatshirts, yanking things out of drawers like she was looking for hidden treasure. She had already made coffee using my beans, my oat milk, my mug, and she was on the phone with someone loudly complaining about people not understanding basic loyalty. She wasn't even embarrassed, not a trace of shame in her voice. I stood there for a second, watching her, thinking back on all the times I defended her, housed her, bought groceries when she didn't ask, covered her gas, and said no problem. Every single time she said, "I'll pay you back later." She turned and saw me, phone still in hand, and said, "We needed to talk." Then she launched into this rant about how I had completely disrespected her in public, how I made her look like a fool and stuck her with a bill she couldn't afford. She said her friends were confused and hurt. Our parents were disgusted with me. She said I made her birthday about me. I didn't say anything. I just let her keep going. Then she said it. She said Maddie was a kid and kids don't need lobster. I still didn't speak. I just looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "Get out." She blinked. At first, I don't think she even processed it. She started laughing, said I was being emotional and needed to cool down, that she wasn't going anywhere. She didn't have a job, didn't have a place lined up, and Mom and Dad's house was too cramped. I said it again, slower this time. "You have 2 days to leave." She stared at me like she'd just been slapped. Then she got mean, said Maddie was spoiled and too sensitive, said I'd always been jealous of her popularity, that people like me always take things too seriously, that I couldn't take a joke. A joke? I didn't respond. I turned around and walked back upstairs. I called a friend who owns a moving van and asked if he had time that weekend. He said, "Sure, anything for me." While Maddie was at her art class, I boxed up everything my sister owned. Clothes, chargers, makeup, shoes, a stack of mail she'd never opened. I even found one of Maddie's books under her bed, a gift Maddie had given her cousins last month. They'd never even opened it. My sister tried to act like it wasn't happening right up until the moving truck pulled into the driveway. Then the texts started. First from her, then from my mom, then from both, one after the other. Mom said I was kicking someone while they were down, that I needed to remember what family means, that Maddie probably wouldn't even remember this in 10 years. But I would, and so would she. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just handed my sister her last box and locked the door after she left. She moved back in with our parents that same night. At first, I thought that was the end of it. But within a week, I started getting messages from my mom, then from my dad, then from someone else entirely. Apparently, things were getting worse over there. 3 days after she moved in with our parents, I got a message from my dad. It was a photo, a receipt from some online store. Over $600 spent on kids' toys, noise-canceling headphones, and a pressure cooker. It was on his credit card. I called him, assuming maybe it was fraud or a mistake. He sighed and said, "No, it wasn't. Your sister had borrowed it for groceries and apparently never logged out of the account." 2 days later, another charge came through, a pair of custom sneakers for her son. $129. That's when I realized she'd moved into their house and started bleeding them dry, too. Meanwhile, Maddie was thriving. After the disaster at the birthday dinner, I worried she'd shut down or start asking why her cousins hated her. Instead, she doubled down at school, started working on a science project that ended up qualifying for a national fair, and even got invited to a weekend program at the local university. I never told her what her aunt said about her. She didn't need to know. But my parents were unraveling. I'd stop by to drop off food or help my dad with something, and the house always felt heavy. My sister would barely come out of her room except to yell at the kids or argue with my mom over laundry or Wi-Fi. One day I walked in and saw her kids on the floor with an iPad. No charger in sight, both eating leftover French fries straight from a takeout bag. No plates, no supervision. I asked where my sister was. My dad pointed toward the backyard. She was out there vaping, said she needed a break and that the kids were just being loud. She asked if I had any extra cash, said her unemployment ran out. I said no. She rolled her eyes and asked if I was still being petty. The next week, the school called my mom. My niece had bitten another student during a group project. When asked why, she said she was tired of being stupid and that her cousin Maddie always wins everything. She was crying. Apparently, a teacher overheard and filed a report. That was when I made the call. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my sister. I contacted Child Services anonymously and explained what I saw. Not abuse, but serious neglect, emotional strain, a parent clearly checked out, and kids showing signs they weren't coping. 3 days later, there was a knock at their door, a welfare check. It didn't go how I thought it would. I assumed my sister would panic, clean the house, pretend everything was fine, and smile through clenched teeth. Instead, she snapped, told the caseworker it was all a setup, that I was jealous, that I wanted to steal her kids. The next day, I got a voicemail. It was my mom. Her voice was shaking. She said something had happened after the visit, something unexpected. My sister had packed a bag, left the house, and vanished for 24 hours. No note, no explanation, no call. She left her kids with our parents and just disappeared. When she finally returned, something was different, and not in a good way. She walked back into our parents' house just before sunrise. My mom heard the door unlock around 5:20 a.m. No explanation, no apology, just the sound of her bedroom door shutting. She slept until almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That day changed everything. Up until then, we'd all tiptoed around it, chalking everything up to stress, to the divorce, to her feeling lost. But after she vanished for 24 hours without telling anyone where she was or who had the kids, it stopped being a phase and started being a pattern. The tension at our parents' house became suffocating. She barely spoke unless it was to criticize or complain. The kids were always on edge. My mom was aging in fast forward, trying to make everything feel normal with grocery trips and game nights that nobody asked for. My dad retreated into his garage most days. When I'd stop by, I could feel the walls shrinking around them. I found out she'd started asking neighbors for money, told one of them it was for school supplies, told another she just needed gas to pick the kids up. One neighbor gave her $20. Another gave her $50. Neither saw it again. One afternoon, I came by and found my niece eating a microwaved corn dog at 3 p.m., still in pajamas, school backpack untouched on the floor. She looked up at me and whispered, "Is my mom mad at me?" I didn't know how to answer. Then came the second school call. Not about fighting, not even behavior. Attendance. 4 unexcused absences in under 2 weeks. My sister told the school she was homeschooling now. That was a lie. That same evening, she showed up at my house. No warning, no text, just rang the bell and said, "Can the kids stay with you for a few days?" I said yes, but only to the kids. She said she just needed space, that she was being suffocated, that no one understood how hard she had it. Then she went off, said I was always trying to play hero, that I was making her look like a bad mom, that Maddie made her kids feel stupid and I loved watching it. Maddie was sitting quietly in the next room finishing a school essay. I didn't say much, just told her again that she needed help. Not space, not a break, help. She laughed like I was clueless and walked off without saying goodbye to her own children. The weekend went fine. Actually, better than fine. The kids were calmer. They ate full meals, watched movies, asked Maddie questions about school and spelling and drawing. Maddie even helped my niece with a science worksheet. No drama, no chaos. On Sunday afternoon, Child Services called me. This time it wasn't just a welfare check. Someone had reported a scene at a dollar store. My sister had been screaming at her son so loudly that a customer pulled him aside to ask if he was okay. Police were called. No arrest, but it was officially logged. Another mark on the file. By Monday, my parents were worn out. My mom admitted that she'd caught my sister crying at the kitchen table at 2 a.m. Not sobbing, just staring at her phone with mascara halfway down her cheeks. She had no job, no money, no plan, and she was starting to spiral in ways none of us could patch over. That night, the caseworker came back. She didn't threaten her. She laid it out clearly. If she didn't begin counseling and show progress, things could escalate fast. It was the most serious anyone had ever been with her. And for the first time in months, my sister didn't argue. She didn't yell or roll her eyes or shift blame. She just went quiet. She agreed to counseling. No fight, no tantrum. And when she walked into the first session 2 days later, I could tell she wasn't doing it for us. She was doing it because for once she understood this wasn't about who was winning anymore. It was about not losing everything. She went. That alone stunned all of us. No tantrum, no dramatic speech. She just got up one morning, said nothing to anyone, and left. My mom assumed she was running errands, maybe disappearing again. But later that night, she found a folded-up paper on the kitchen counter. It was an intake form from the community clinic 2 towns over. She'd gone to her first counseling session. None of us knew what to do with that. She didn't come home transformed. She still walked past everyone like they weren't there. She still barely acknowledged the kids. But something had cracked open, even if she wasn't ready to admit it out loud. That night, there was no shouting, no blaming. She just stayed in her room, quiet. The next morning, she came out and made toast for the kids. Nothing big, just buttered toast on paper towels. But she handed it to them without snapping, without acting like it was a favor. They looked stunned. My niece whispered a thank you. My nephew just blinked at her like he was waiting for a punchline. That week, she went to her second session, then the third. After the fourth, the counselor recommended a local parenting support group. We all expected her to skip it, maybe pretend she'd gone and fake a signing sheet or something. But she went. My mom found out because one of the volunteers called to confirm the next meeting time. They thought she had referred her daughter. She hadn't. My sister signed up herself. A few nights later, I picked the kids up for the weekend. They were calmer now, less skittish. They still fought like siblings do, but they weren't walking on eggshells the way they used to. Maddie brought out an old card game and taught them how to play. My niece got the rules wrong for 10 straight minutes and no one yelled. That hadn't happened in a while. What I didn't know was that Maddie had left something behind at my parents' house that day. A folded yellow paper on the kitchen counter. Just a note in her crooked 11-year-old handwriting. I hope you feel better soon. I think your kids are smart and funny. I'm sorry if I made them feel bad. I didn't know. I didn't know until my mom sent me a photo the next morning. My sister had taped the note to her mirror. A week after that, she asked my dad to help her with a resume. Not in a fake way, not like she was pretending to look for jobs to get people off her back. She actually opened up a laptop, sat next to him, and typed. She applied to 3 places that day. She didn't get any of them, but she went. She tried. That same evening, she asked my mom to watch the kids so she could go to a job fair. She came back with 2 business cards and a pamphlet. No guarantees, but effort. Then she texted me. No long explanation, no sarcasm, no guilt-tripping, just this. Thanks for not giving up on me. I don't think I would have helped me if I were you. It hit me harder than I expected, not because it fixed anything, but because for the first time, she sounded like someone who knew she'd gone too far. Like someone finally seeing the damage in the mirror and maybe slowly trying to clean it up. Things didn't magically fix themselves. There wasn't some big emotional reunion or a moment where the sky cleared and we all held hands and cried. That's not how it works in real life. Healing came slower, quietly, one uncomfortable, awkward, necessary step at a time. But it did come. My sister kept going to counseling. She didn't talk about it much, but she went every week without skipping. My mom drove her the first few times, then she started walking half an hour each way. She said it helped her think. She stayed at the dollar store job longer than any of us expected. When the schedule changed and they needed someone to open on Saturdays, she said yes. She started bringing home snacks for the kids after each shift. At first, it was just cookies or juice boxes. One day, she came home with little notebooks and told the twins they were idea journals. She said Maddie used to have one. They started drawing in them that same night. And then came the small, weird signs that she was waking up from the mess she'd made. She cleaned out her old inbox. She called the electric company herself to help our parents fix a billing error, something she never would have touched before. She apologized to my mom for causing extra noise. Not for everything. Not yet. But it was the first apology any of us had heard from her in over a year. She showed up at my house one evening unannounced again. But this time, she was holding a bag of clothes stuff her kids had outgrown. She said Maddie might want them for donating. And then she said something I didn't expect. It's weird watching someone else be good to your kids when you weren't. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. She didn't need comfort. She needed space to say it out loud. Then she asked if I thought Maddie actually liked being around her kids. She wasn't being defensive. She was nervous. Scared that Maddie only helped them out of obligation. Scared they didn't deserve kindness. I told her the truth. Maddie had set aside her old science kit. Not just that, she'd made a guide to help her cousins use it, wrote instructions in her notebook, added sticky notes with suggestions, drew little doodles so they'd think it was fun. She didn't do it because I asked her to. She just did it. My sister was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded and said she'd tell her thanks. And a few days later, she did. She showed up with the twins holding a container of cookies they'd made from a box. Underbaked, but full of effort. She asked if she could stay for a bit, sat on the couch, watched her kids play Uno with Maddie. When she left, she didn't rush out the door. She hugged her kids, promised she'd be back on time the next day. The next time she came over, she brought nothing. No offering, no excuse, just herself. She helped Maddie and the twins build a solar system from leftover cardboard. It wasn't pretty. The planets were out of order, but nobody cared. They were laughing. She was laughing. It's not some perfect ending. She still has bad days, the kind where she gets quiet again, shuts herself in her room, or forgets what she was trying to fix. But then she comes back out and keeps trying. And now, when she slips, the kids notice. They ask her what's wrong, and she answers. She's still living with our parents, still working part-time, still figuring out what the rest of her life's going to look like. But something's different now. She's in it, present, not hiding, not blaming. It's not redemption. It's not forgiveness tied up in a bow. It's just the beginning of something better. And for the first time in a long time, that's enough.